today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about
What drives that money fight that so many people are having? You've probably had it. I know I have. Money battles don't just happen to quote unquote poor people. In fact, they happen to people across all wealth levels and classes. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. And today's episode is about financial freedom, transforming financial fights into joyful living. That sounds like a mouthful, right? And I want to be really clear that financial freedom does not mean that you have so much freaking money that you don't know what to do with it, though it might, and I'm open to that. Financial freedom means that you feel confident about your finances. Now, 76% of all marriages fight about money. And interestingly, pretty consistently, the statistics show that approximately 30% of all American families have a budget or spending plan. So that means that probably that 24% of people who aren't fighting about money, they probably fall somewhere in that 30%. I'm just guessing. But no one's done that study yet, so don't quote me on it. What's really interesting is that money battles don't just happen to quote unquote poor people. In fact, they happen to people across all wealth levels and classes. Along with that, the experience of living hand to mouth, which is what approximately 70% of America is doing, is an experience that also happens across all classes and income levels. I mean, it's shocking that basically, if you're earning $500,000 a year, you're probably spending $600,000. What's really insane is what drives that. All right. When you think about it, what drives that is the desire for more, better, different. Well, in contrast to that, statistics show that after about $80,000 a year in income, happiness does not increase much when you're making more money. In fact, there's a lot of stress that comes with wanting it to be more and better and different all the time. That's what this episode is about, is how do we move from this keeping up with the Joneses mindset, this I gotta have it now, whatever it is I'm seeing on Instagram or YouTube or on the street, I gotta have it now, to, hey, you know what? What I have right now is pretty amazing. Not that we shouldn't aspire, not that we shouldn't want, not that we shouldn't dream, not that it isn't okay to have more, but how do we move to a place where we're joyful with what we have, where we feel like we're living abundantly now as we go to that better? And let me just explain the value of that. Anyone who's worked with others in weight loss in particular, and I've got a lot of personal experience with this, I used to carry a lot of extra weight, will tell their clients that before you can really sustainably lose weight, you need to like who you are and how you are now. That's kind of tough, right? Because the thing that usually drives you to want to lose weight is you look in the mirror and go, this isn't who I want to be. But the problem with isn't who I want to be is that's forever. What creates, drives, engenders eating disorders is this isn't who I want to be. I need to do more. Well, it's also true for money. It's also true for finances. Let me just give you an idea of how bad this is. Really, what we're talking about here is what's called financial literacy. Right? That means understanding how money works, or how the business of your family works. The statistics show that lack of financial literacy cost Americans $415 billion in 2020. It means they just lost as a nation, we lost $415 billion. But the average credit card debt in America is about $6,270 right now. Around 40% of Americans have less than $300 in savings. Only 30% of Americans have a long-term financial plan. Those are those people who have a plan, who have a budget, who have a spending plan. The average U.S. household's median income in 2020 was $78,500, which was actually pretty close to that $80,000 mark, right? The average median income was at that level where having more money than that isn't going to drive a lot more happiness. Only 44% of Americans expected their finances to improve, but it gets worse. All right, those were 2020 statistics. In 2023, Americans save less than 4% of their income. In 2022, the average house before tax household income was 74,580. So it has gone down in 2 years since that other statistic. We've gone from 78,000 to a little less than 75,000. That means more people are actually feeling like if I had some more money, I'd be happier. These kind of statistics can be really daunting. All right. But what you need to get is the statistics are not being driven by the state, not just being driven by inflation, not just being driven by the state of the economy. They're being driven by our own understanding, you and me, of how much money do we need to have a functioning family? How much money beyond that do we need to show that we have a certain level of wealth? And what's the formula for having those things, right? So the first goal is to have enough money. That $80,000 mark I was talking about might be, 90,000 now, but there's a certain mark where below $80,000, having more money increases happiness. And the reason for that is people who are making about approximately $80,000 a year, depending on what city you live in and what the cost of living is in that city, those people have the basics. They've got a car, they've got a washer, dryer, maybe they have a dishwasher, they've got TV. So they've got the basic stuff to keep a household running efficiently. Right? If you don't have a washer dryer, then you've got to go to the laundromat or you've got to wash the stuff by hand. If you don't have a car and you don't have a washer dryer, it gets even harder, right? You're spending more time and energy just to keep everything functioning. So the first piece is, are you at that point? Do you have those things? And the second piece is, once you have those things, how much more do other things, having a better car, a better house, a better washer, dryer, etc., matter? How much does it really matter? And the mistake that we make, all of us, is we see the shiny object and we think, dang, I want I want a Maserati. I want a Bugatti. I want, you name it, I want it. I want to go on vacation and I want to have the no-line experience at Disney, right? Which is a guaranteed thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of expense. In fact, we become willing to spend money on having experiences and having better products so that it looks like we have more money than we do. Because what we're told is the more money it looks like we have, the more money we're going to earn or be rewarded, right? If the rich people hang out with rich people reward rich people. The richer we look, the more opportunity there's going to be for us. Now, there is some truth to that, but it's not true. If you're right now around the $80,000 mark to, let's say, $250,000 or $300,000, it's not going to matter that looking rich is not going to matter that much, depending on the job that you have. And this is such a pervasive mindset that even millionaires are living hand to mouth. How many celebrities have you heard about who ended up going bankrupt and ended up, having a job as an insurance salesman or something else? There are countless celebrity riches to rags stories out there. In fact, I wish I had looked some up for you. You can Google it and look them up. And the reason is that we all get hooked on looking good, looking wealthy, and there's a lot of financial illiteracy. Now, guess what? Money fights happen around all of this stuff, right? There is the money fight about, I have a client who came to me and said that he could not afford Boy Scouts for his kids but his wife enrolled them in Boy Scouts anyway. He couldn't afford the uniforms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. His wife enrolled them anyway. And that was a big fight that he had, right? I had another client who his wife was a stay-at-home mom. He was working his ass off to support them, and she was complaining that he wasn't supplying them with enough money for her to go to Aruba with all the other moms from the school that she was hanging out with. She wanted a lifestyle that he couldn't supply, and there was a lot of fighting about that lifestyle, right? And they were living in a community where their income was at the bottom of the median in that community, and so for them to, but what she wanted was to live like they were in the top. That's like in a nutshell. This is the American conundrum. We all want to look like we're on the top, but many of us are in the middle or on the bottom of a certain economic group or class. And that drives huge conflicts. Why aren't you earning more? Why are you spending so much? And those conflicts come out of lack of financial literacy on one or both sides. All right. So the statistics also show that one person tends to understand what it costs to run the household, while the other person tends to understand what the long-term plan is for the family. But the fact that neither of them are on the same page leads to a lot of fighting. The fighting leads to one of two things. Couples either fight so hard that the marriage ends. 50% of all marriages end in the United States. 76% of them fight about money. Guess how much money contributes to that? I can't tell you how many divorce clients I've worked with who were still upset about money even as they were getting divorced. The money was the thing they were fighting about in the divorce. Or if it doesn't end in conflict, they become conflict avoidant. Right? And when you're conflict avoidant, what happens then is then you just keep living hand to mouth, hoping against all hopes that you will earn enough money, get that bonus or whatever it is that you need to close the gap. Or maybe you just keep going into debt further and further and further. And I'm not talking about secured debt, right? Secured debt would be I have a car against the loan. If they come for something, for the car. If I don't pay the auto loan, they'll take the car. I have a house against the mortgage. If they come for something, they'll take the house. I'm talking about unsecured debt. Remember that the average credit card per household is 6,000 and change. That's unsecured debt. Some people have much higher average credit card debt, right? That's debt, by the way. That's not $6,000 a month that people are spending. They're carrying on average $6,000 in credit card debt, which means they're paying somewhere between 15 to 30% interest on that. And that interest is sucking them dry, right? When we live beyond our means, the interest sucks us dry. And that what ups the money fight. If you want to change this dynamic, if you want to shift from fighting about why don't we have enough, or why are we so far in debt, or why don't we have what they have, or why are you spending so much? The first thing you need to do is get on the same page about money. You need to get real about where you are. Like, how much money are we earning? You need to get real about what you're spending. Are we spending more than we're earning? Are we spending less than we're earning? And once you've had that conversation, you need to get real about having an emergency fund, about having a budget for the future. I'll share a story with you about this. I had a client who both partners were earning some good money. One was an attorney with their own law firm. The other one was an entrepreneur with his own construction business. And they both had pretty good income, and yet they were living way beyond their means. And then when they came to me, they were fighting about this. And what we did was I had them sit down and download their statements from their bank account, just the statements from the bank account, nothing else. And then what they did was they categorized every expenditure that was in those bank account statements. And they put them in the categories of mortgage/rent, utilities, insurance, cable, internet, all the like basic things that they needed for functioning. Then the next category was, I'm not going to call them luxury expenditures, but I'm going to say beyond basic needs, like eating out, beyond basic clothing, right? There was actually how much, in this case, there was how much were they spending on clothing? It turned out he was pretty frugal. She was spending a lot, particularly on the kids. And so they needed to get a handle on that. But the purpose was just to see where was the money going. Um, how much were they spending on vacations? How much were they spending on ordering out? How much were they spending on restaurants? How much were they spending on movies? How much were they spending, like any expenditure that they could easily categorize, right? So then they took a look at, they pulled in their credit cards, because a lot of that money a big chunk was going to credit cards. So then they went through their credit cards and did the same thing. Where's that money going to? And what percentage of our income is going towards interest on credit cards? And once they got a picture on how much money, it was something like 10% of their income was going towards paying just the interest on the credit cards. They weren't even paying them down. Once they got a handle that was happening, there was like a big aha moment for them. And of course, there was potentially a huge money fight there, which we managed not to have, right? Because we were in the brainstorming phase. Now, the first thing that he wanted to do, of course, was, honey, we need to stop buying clothes for the kids. We need to stop eating. And then she got him real about that. And so the next conversation was, what are we buying at Lululemon that maybe we could buy at Target? And the next conversation was, okay, what's a reasonable amount for us to spend going out? And then another conversation was, all right, we really like the way that we're living. What if we paid down this credit card? What would happen to our if we just paid down the credit card? If we bit the bullet on some things now, paid the credit cards off, and didn't have this 10% going out just for interest, how much pressure would this take off of our marriage, off of our finances, right? This is a process. It took some time. And I'm going to tell you, they weren't comfortable with it. They didn't really want to look. Nobody really wants to look. Everybody says things like, I am too busy to go through my statements. I am too busy. This conversation is going to start too many fights. There's a lot of fear around it. And once they did it, so much steam came off of that financial fight that they were having. And once they started to come into agreement about, all right, what do we do about now? How will we bite the bullet now so that in 3 months it'll be better? Will feel better. Their whole dynamic started changing. Like this, knowing where your money's going, you don't even have to have a plan. Just knowing where it's going is a giant step forward. And it will start you thinking about, all right, what's next? If you're fighting about this, if you feel like doing this process on your own is too challenging, hey, feel free to reach out to me. And this is going to be a piece of the End the Fight masterclass that we're having in September. But come to richinrelationship.com if you're interested in that free masterclass, like ways to end this money fight, right? The money fight, 76% of all marriages are fighting about money. I want to wipe that out. Right? This masterclass is going to help put an end to that. Go to richinrelationship.com, RICH, rich, IN, relationship, RELATIONSHIP.com, and look for the masterclass. If it's not up there, we will have a wait list up there for it if it isn't ready yet. Well, that's a great idea. I never thought of that. All right. So I'm going to have a sign-up sheet for the masterclass so that when it comes out, I can put you on it. So feel free to go and look. Share your money problems with me. Share what are the big fights or not fights that you're having. Like the worst thing is when you have huge money problems and you're not fighting about it and you're both just about to explode, right? That is the worst. It's almost as awful as fighting all the time, which destroys the kids. All right. Now, before I wrap this up, I just want to be really clear. Just like the people who want to lose weight, all right, part of this inventory of where your money is going, it's about appreciating what you have, right? This couple, they actually had pretty good income, right? The problem wasn't their income. The problem was they were just unaware of what they were doing with their money. And they hadn't really thought about the future as much as they could. They were struggling so much that they just hadn't taken the time to think about the future. And the first part is to understand where you are. The second part is to end the struggle. And then the third part is to start planning for the future. And while you're doing that, get that. If you've got a home, a car, a washer, dryer, a dishwasher, internet, and all those things, the chances are having a better car, a better dishwasher, etc., going to the right restaurant isn't going to make you that much happier. What's going to make you happier is taking the time to really appreciate one another. What's going to make you happier is to appreciate the abundance that you have so much in already that you're sharing with your children. What's going to make you joyful is knowing where you are, getting a clue about where you want to go, and starting to enjoy that journey together. And if you want to learn more about this, reach out to me, ping me, Rich at Rich in Relationship. Thank you for coming today. And we're going to be doing a bunch more episodes on how to end the money fight.